Welcome to TvAbraham, Jim Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure serving with you over the years. And I get a chance to ask you a full range of things because you've been Deputy National Security Advisor, been ambassador in places all over Europe as well as the Middle East. And so let's talk about Syria. You know a bit about Syria, having been the senior representative to Syria under Trump 1. How do you see this new ruler, Ahmed al-Shara? How would you describe him?
The Middle East is in as important a transition point as I have seen in my life, comparable only to post-Yom Kippur War in 73 and post-Kuwait liberation in 91. What I mean is the major threat to the region over the past 20 years, Iran's all-of-government efforts to control the Arab Middle East, mainly through proxies in countries such as Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and the quasi-country of Gaza, has been dealt, if not a fatal, a dramatic blow in a almost 18-month campaign led by Israel, supported, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes more enthusiastically, by the Biden administration and various other regional and other actors. This is an extraordinary opportunity. But the center of gravity for the whole thing is Syria. Why do I say that? Iran has effectively been driven out of the country, along with its minions such as Hezbollah and the Iraqi Hashashabi. But Iran will try to get back in. And that would change the entire picture of the region, again, to the worst, because for Iran, Syria is a trifecta. First of all, it's an important country it wants to have as part of its axis of evil. Secondly, with Syria, you can start resupplying Hezbollah, which has been badly defeated and is, no longer with a supply chain. So Syria gives it one. Secondly, Iraq, which has been showing some real signs of independence from Iran over the past 2 months since Syria collapsed, finds itself no longer sandwiched between Iran to its east and Iran's most important proxy, Assad, to its west. So we need to build on this. The way to build on this is, frankly, to support the government in Damascus. I have worked indirectly with al-Shara, then known as Jolani, when he was the leader of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Is this guy a Democrat? No, he's an Islamist. Is he going to be the savior of Syria? I don't know. What I do know is who's the alternative. The Europeans have moved out, have lifted many of their sanctions, and are trying to develop economic ties, as well as the usual diplomatic ones. Likewise, the Arab states. We are hesitating. I don't know why. And now everything is frozen. And I don't know what they're thinking, because they have to act, or if this guy and the Syrian people are not helped by the international community, and because of the very tough sanctions that, frankly, I was one of the major architects of, that
the
Caesar Act and others that were focused on Assad.
Yes.
But now they're focused on Jolani and the people. But they're secondary sanctions, so they impact the Europeans and the Arabs moving. But if we don't act quickly to prop up a government and prop up some kind of early recovery and at least humanitarian aid, they're going to look someplace else, Bob. And what they're going to look for is Tehran. Look at the Russians. They've sent 2 delegations in there to talk to them. Putin called them on the phone. They don't care that they were enemies yesterday. And if we don't act on Syria, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
How does Turkey exercise control or not over this guy?
Turkey never had control over this guy, but they have a relationship with al-Shara, and they're trying to develop it. And they're certainly the biggest winner so far out of Syria, other than Israel and the whole region for getting rid of the Iranians. But secondly, they have the most influence over these guys.
The Druze will claim that a lot of people disappeared during his time. There was massacres, treating the Druze minority in Syria very badly. So they're very worried about him. And of course, they have a lot of compatriots inside Israel. What do you tell them?
This is a tough one. First of all, I know of a lot of incidents where in Idlib, minority groups certainly were oppressed. There were killings. People disappeared. That we did not see a lot of that after 2018, and one reason was we were monitoring as best we could because we were signing a waiver, getting the secretary to sign a waiver, so we didn't want to see a lot of that. The problem with the Druze when they're talking about HTS, the problem with the Arabs along the Euphrates when they're talking about the Kurds, the problem with the Kurds when they're talking about the Turks and the Syrian National Army is everybody has their massacre accounts. They're all true. It is extremely difficult to figure out whether you're dealing with the Islamic State and the burning of people alive, whether you're dealing with Assad and the barrel burnings and the chemical weapons, industrial strength, mass slaughter and oppression, or whether you're dealing with the rough kind of justice that is meted out in a very tough neighborhood.
Let's move on to post-war Gaza. We've heard President Trump's statements several times now. He's focused on it. He's talking about it in his first months of his presidency. How do you assess those statements of the new administration, and what do you see as the prospects for post-war Gaza?
Never say never with President Trump, but he seems to have moved from we have to do this to this is a suggestion, you take it. I think that he was, first of all, he was pleased that the King of Jordan didn't slap it down, nor did Bibi Netanyahu. He looked uncomfortable in the joint press conference when it came up, but he didn't slap it down. He's saying two things. One is, we got to think outside of the box with Gaza. Look how this thing evolved from essentially a Palestinian state in 2005 with its own airport, its own port. The EU engaged on the ground, including at the Rafah crossing, and total Israeli withdrawal, including the dismantling of settlements. So the dream for the West Bank, and look what happened within 2 years. We all know the history, and then the cycle of violence, escalating violence in every cycle, leading to the 7th of October. And just like with 9/11, and I want to draw that parallel in America, it's never again for the Israelis. So what Trump is saying is, are you sure this can all go back to normal? I don't think so. Let's think outside the box. And what that has done is it's compelled the Egyptians to come up with their plan. The Saudis, of course, are gathering a group of Arab states together to talk about one. We believe that that plan will look like one, and you have some background in this as well. On Gaza the day after that we published at the Wilson Center with the contributions of a number of people, including you, Bob, and the whole idea is for an international presence. The UAE has, they may have come up with the idea themselves, but it generally overlaps with ours, pushing this for an international presence for an interim period. Eventually, the Palestinian Authority may have some role. They already have a minor one at the Rafah gate. We'll see what the Israelis can tolerate. The Israeli requirement for them to withdraw completely and declare the war is over is clearly Hamas not only cannot hold power, it can't be in a position to return to power. The prospect of that being the outcome is more likely than almost any other outcome, including Israel maintains perpetual war there. That's a second Lebanon, and they've had their experiences with that, or the Trump plan.
How do you foresee, since you do predictions, the likelihood of a Gulf country joining the Abraham Accords? Let's remember we have now Bahrain, UAE, Morocco. What about some of the others? You've worked there.
Well,
Kuwait,
Qatar, and Oman, each for its own specific reasons, is not going to act before Saudi Arabia. So the big prize is Saudi Arabia. What the Saudis will demand in this regard and how malleable they will be to pressure from the Trump administration, pressure from the Israelis, to modify, to take half a loaf for a third of a loaf or 2/3 of a loaf, I don't know. But this is an important negotiation, because if Syria is the center of gravity right now to a peaceful, stable future of the Middle East, due to Iran not being able to reconstitute its proxy empire, the expansion of the Abraham Accords with Israel and Saudi Arabia will be the other nail in the coffin of Iran's evil regional ambitions.
So let's turn now to Europe, and specifically to Ukraine. Let's assume that what I think is true, which is that this is an existential war for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if so, and the Ukrainians sincere in believing that, why don't they conscript young men between the ages of 18 and 25? It used to be, until April of last year.
Well, for at least Vladimir Putin, it's an existential war too for the
Yeah.
future of a Russia that is on an equal basis with China and the United States.
Right.
And he isn't drafting people to go to this war either. The Ukrainian motivations I don't understand. Putin's motivations I understand better. There is a certain amount of anxiety and opposition latent in Russia that Putin does not want to ignite with a war that is dragging on. It is not only a war of attrition, with extremely heavy Russian casualties.
Yeah.
Proportionally, they're no greater and may even be less than the Ukrainian ones, but the numbers are astounding, and the equipment losses are really extraordinary. We cannot allow Ukraine to fall into the hands of Russia, because you have a highly trained and effective military force of 1 million Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
You have a long border with, in some cases, weak NATO states. We have to recognize that, rightly or wrongly, NATO expansion is for the Russian people, not just Putin, the functional equivalent of communist expansion for us in the Cold War.
One last question on Germany. What do you think of this alternative for Germany? I mean, I've read so many articles that they're far right, that they're neo-Nazi. Maybe that's all true, but no one in any of these articles explains what the policies that they're proposing are that makes them neo-Nazi.
These are people mainly from Eastern Germany who, to the extent, and it's slowing down, modern Germany has left behind, economically, socially, in terms of self-worth. Their main complaint is, well, to quote J.D. Vance, we didn't vote for millions of foreigners, many of whom, and in Germany this is a special situation, not unique to Germany, but much more so in Germany, of foreign asylum seekers, most of whom really don't have legitimate refugee status, coming to Germany, being given everything you could imagine, and then lashing out with mass murder. It's all about, just like in the last American election, a political system that is foisting an immigrant policy on a population that is extremely angry at it.
Thank you very much for coming in to TvAbraham. It's always been a pleasure working with you. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.